Hello, unknown caller.
Hello, Suzie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jared?
I'm doing well. I've been really looking forward to this for a long time. Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. The Hey Chaplain podcast brings you stories and wisdom about life and law enforcement, giving support and encouragement to those who wear the badge. If you're in leadership with your agency or your local FOP, you need to hear this story, because this interview takes a look at how previous generations of law enforcement leaders failed to take care of the families of officers killed in the line of duty. I know that we can learn from these mistakes and do better in the future. Today we're talking to Suzie Sawyer, the founder of Concerns of Police Survivors. She tells how, as a law enforcement spouse in the 1970s and later, she took charge and met a need that law enforcement culture was failing to do on its own. She tells the inspirational story of how she built from scratch an organization that would memorialize fallen officers and take care of their widows and families. Listen to how law enforcement leadership made the wrong assumptions about grieving families, and don't miss what Suzie identifies as the biggest obstacle to Concerns of Police Survivors doing this good work. Now let's drop in on this conversation with Suzie Sawyer, where she sets the record straight for those of us who may have jumped to the wrong conclusion about her.
Well, I hate to tell you this. I am not a survivor.
Oh, you're not?
I am not.
Really?
Yes, everybody thinks my husband died, and he's sitting right back here in the computer room, just as old as he can be.
How is so? Well, then my question's going to have to be, how did you get involved with this? Because as I read somewhere, and I did a little bit of research on you, obviously not enough. And
actually, Jared, somebody did write a book and say that I was a widow, and it went out, and it was like,
so there's a bit of misinformation out there. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So how did you get involved with survivors then?
Well, my husband was a Prince George's County, Maryland police officer.
Okay.
And we lost some friends. We had, when he joined the police department, it took up a lot of time. He was going to school. We had little ones, and I was kind of struggling with, him never being there for Sunday dinners or holiday dinners, and, always having to go to court and never seemed to have much time for family. So I said, we got to figure something out here. And he made the suggestion that I join the FOP auxiliary there in Prince George's County.
Okay.
And when he did that, numerous friends of his said, "Are you nuts?" And so I joined this auxiliary and found a tremendous support group. Absolutely tremendous. And I'm thinking I joined in about 74, 75.
Okay.
And by 77, I was president of the organization. One day, June 26, 1978, two young Prince George's County police officers were killed in the basement of a precinct station by a 14-year-old kid who had been stealing money out of the laundromats in the basement of apartment buildings.
Wow.
And as one officer tried to fingerprint him, he grabbed the officer's gun out of his holster, ripped it out of, ripped the holster to shreds, actually, and shot Officer Rusty Claggett and Brian Swart, the first officer, through the door, coming to see why there were shots fired.
Yeah.
And we went through a horrible dual funeral. The media, of course, made the kid a hero. Identified the officers as brutal, and it just went from there. It's hard enough to bury one, let alone two.
Yeah.
And Rusty Claggett was married, had two small children. I mean, one was a toddler and one was kind of newborn, I think just a couple months old. And the other officer was single. So we buried the two. We sat through a trial. Terrence Johnson was found not guilty by reason of insanity in the death of Officer Swart.
Wow.
And the most he would serve was like 20 years in prison. That was pretty hard for the department to take and the department's families to take. A lot of people talked about leaving the profession and, just moving on in life to get something that was so much less difficult. The two funerals were exceptionally hard. The media was just, battering the police department and the officers and the whole bit. And it was pretty hard for everybody to take. We held a memorial service, our first memorial service that next year. And the newspaper reporter had it right on. He said when the names of Brian Swart and Rusty Claggett were read, the silence was deafening.
Yeah.
And it was, and it still, just has me here a little emotional because I remember it like it was yesterday. So Carolyn Claggett happened to be a member of our auxiliary, and so was her mother-in-law. Blanche had been a member for a long time. She was, I think, a charter member of that FOP auxiliary. And of course, her husband was a police officer, and after he retired, she kind of lost touch with the organization because, he wasn't a cop anymore.
Sure.
Carolyn joined, and after the funeral, we couldn't get Carolyn to answer a phone call. She wouldn't answer a knock at her door. She wouldn't respond to any notes that we sent her. So one day I said to the chief, Chief, do you know how Carolyn Claggett's doing? And he says, yeah, she's doing fine. And I said, we've sent her cards, calling her, dropping by her house. She won't answer the door. You really think she's fine? He goes, oh my gosh, yes, we know she's fine. I said, how do you know that? He said, on the day that we buried Rusty, I gave her my card and said, if you ever need any help, call us. And she's never called.
Oh, you're kind of making an assumption there. Yeah.
So here we're talking about 1978, and that was how it was handled.
Yeah. Yeah.
You thought you put on this beautiful ceremony with all these police cruisers and so many hundreds of cops. I mean, a lot of cops attended the funerals back then, too.
Yeah.
But there was really no follow-up. It was like they worked with a widow until they were able to get the benefits. Mm-hmm. And then it was kind of like a pat on the head and hope you have a nice life.
Off you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and funerals do serve that purpose for everybody else. For everybody else, exactly. Once the funeral's over, you have permission to go on. But that's not what it's like for the surviving family.
No.
Yeah.
No, it definitely isn't like that. Well, Carolyn was having a lot of issues dealing with it. And the unfortunate part was COPS wasn't there for her then. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of the catalyst that gave me, some ideas on, maybe we need to do more of these memorial services and call more attention to it. Maybe we need to, try to get across the message that police officers are human too.
Now, you actually had something to do with the memorial service in Washington, D.C., right?
I did.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, I got to work up to it, Jared.
Okay, go ahead.
So I got active and we started the Maryland State FOP Auxiliary.
Okay.
And we had a state memorial service.
Okay.
And then we went to a national conference and ran this crazy woman by the name of Suzie Sawyer for national secretary. And she won. It was like shocking. Oh my gosh, she won. But I went into the board meeting afterwards and I made the motion to hold the National Peace Officers Memorial Day service every May 15th in Washington, D.C. on the Capitol grounds if we could get them.
Right.
Pretty much in Washington, D.C. We needed a national service. So on May 15th, 1982, we held the first memorial service. We had 125 people attend, including the little Boy Scout troop that stopped to take up seats and take a rest.
Oh.
And we honored our fallen officers.
Yeah.
The president of the national FOP at that time was a gentleman by the name of Leo Marchetti. And he came up to me and he said, Suzie, this was really nice, but where is everybody? And being my sweet self, I said, Leo, you just stood at that podium and said you represent 165,000 police officers nationwide. You tell me where everybody is.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a sassy person or anything, but
I can't imagine. No.
He kind of heard me loud and clear.
Yeah.
And the next year they had a board meeting in D.C. And so 600 people were going to attend this memorial service. But better still, we had 10 families that we were able to contact, tell them what was coming down. They decided to come and see it, and they came for the memorial service.
Wow, that second year you had surviving families?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
Yes. And actually, the first year, the Claggets were there.
Okay.
So we did, at the first service, we did have, just a few, but it wasn't that year's survivors.
Right.
It was Blanche Claggett that knew she was part of the FOP auxiliary still. So the night before the memorial service, the FOP had a hospitality room. Now, Reverend, I'm a little nervous on what I'm going to tell you, but everybody's in the party having a great time. And, I like to have a beer here and there. And so we're talking, and in walks one lady, and nobody knows who she is. And man, officer goes up, hey, I'm Officer so-and-so or Jim, whatever, however he introduced himself. And he said, can I get you a drink? And she said yes. And he'd bring the drink back and she'd start to cry. And very quickly he'd kind of like get away from it. I said, well, this is weird. This is really weird. We don't know who these women are coming in here. They're getting a drink and then they're crying. Something's up here. And so one of those guys came over to me and said, Suzie, you got to get these women out of here. They're all widows.
Oh, yeah. And
I said, we got to get them out of here? And he said, yeah, they're ruining our party.
Oh, man.
So since you brought them here, you need to take care of them. So failing to know the local hangouts where you could go and have a nice conversation, we went to the FOP lodge.
Okay.
Because everybody else was up at the hotel, at the party.
Right.
The FOP lodge was kind of nice and quiet. A lady by the name of Trudy Chaplain, who was the president of the FOP, National FOP Auxiliary at that time, was also there. And both she and I realized real quickly that we didn't understand what these women were talking about. They talked about wanting to die themselves.
Yeah.
They talked about the day after the funeral, nobody from the agency talked to them.
Yeah.
They talked about other police wives who would cross the road just so they wouldn't have to bump into them,
to avoid
because
them.
there, but by the grace of God, go I.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just horrific. And like I said, way back in the 70s, I thought we took care of them really well. And we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't. And here we were, an FOP auxiliary, and we didn't know how badly these women were being mishandled, you know?
Yeah.
So after the talk, they decided they wanted to stay together for the year. Could somebody, make that happen? I said, I can do that. And then they talked about wanting a seminar. And I said, and what are we going to do? Sit around and talk about death and dying? And the lady says, yeah, because nobody in law enforcement talks about it. And officers are killed every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect idea. So we went through the memorial service. They went home. I kept in touch with them. And all that year, from May of 83 to May of 84, we did all the legal paperwork. And on May 14th, 1984, Concerns of Police Survivors was voted to exist unanimously by 110 police survivors. So we went from the Claggets at the first one to 10 at the second one to 110 at the first seminar. And now C.O.P.S represents more than 54,000 survivors nationwide.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And then you were in an executive position there with the organization. What executive director? Was that right?
I was.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like you mentioned earlier, if you have something that you want to do, it's going to cost you. And so I too worked for probably 3 years for a meager salary, and put more money into it than I made, I'm sure.
Yes.
But you know what? It was a passion that I had that had developed, and I wasn't going to let it fail. The biggest barrier we had in our early years was law enforcement itself.
Just organizations not wanting to help or
correct,
even
not supporting us. Not supporting us. Yeah. They just need to go home and forget it all happened. You don't understand. They don't forget.
No.
Well, you know what? They got all this money, so they should be good. Money doesn't heal the heart.
Yeah.
Money doesn't heal the mind. Money doesn't really make life better when you're in such a pit that you can't crawl out.
Yeah. So in what ways did you guys find that got traction? I mean, you started. I mean, I'm familiar with C.O.P.S now. I wasn't until I became a chaplain. But how did that evolve? Where you went from these survivors are not getting any real help to okay, well, let's do a seminar, let's do this national memorial. How did the other pieces develop, and which ones did you think really worked?
Well, I remember sitting in the chair in my office in the basement of our house in Maryland about 3 weeks before the second National Police Survivors Conference, saying, I need at least $7,500 to make this work, and I don't have a dime. So one day I pick up the phone, and it's a gentleman from DuPont, and he goes, hi, I want to know what you need to make this National Police Week work. And I said, is this a joke? Who's calling me? And of course he goes, no, this is for real. I have I'm in charge of the Kevlar vest program up here at DuPont.
Sure.
So I said, well, okay, this is what I need. I said, I know I need at least $7,500 for the meals for the day. And I need probably another $2,500 for mailing and printing and doing everything else. And he goes, okay, I get a check for $10,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And DuPont was a major sponsor of everything in the first several years while that man worked there at DuPont.
Right.
And then when they had some changes in personnel, it was kind of like, this guy's thinking about something else. So, so what happened was, and this you may choose not to use.
That's okay.
My mother had close friends who had a son who went to the Navy right out of high school.
Okay.
He came back from the Navy, and he needed a part-time job. So my parents, believe this or not, owned a beer distributor in a little town. So they gave him the job. And when Charlie finished with his college, Charlie Lauer, his name is, when Charlie went to Washington, D.C., he got a job at the Justice Department. So I go home one weekend where Police Week is coming up again. And I said to my mother, I'm just really having a tough time raising money. I don't know what to do. It's growing. People want to do, more things. I don't have the money. She goes, why don't you call Charlie? He's a big wig down there. When you come from my hometown, a big wig could be the head custodian.
Right.
And you know how that is. So I went back and I thought, well, what the heck? So I pick up the phone and I call Justice Department. Do you have a Charlie Lauer that works there? Yes. Do you want me to connect you? Yes, please. So the lady answers the phone, Mr. Lauer. Mr. Lauer's office. I thought, oh, he's got a secretary. This is nice. I said, is Charlie there? And she goes, yes. Can I tell him who's calling? And I said, tell him one of Bertha's girls. And she said, excuse me? So I told her again. So she, puts me on hold, and Charlie goes, which one is it? Which one? So I talked to him for a couple minutes, and I said, Charlie, I got this issue, and I don't know if you can help me or what, but I said, I got a great program going here. I just need some funding. So he says, what do you do? So I told him, started this National Police Survivors campaign, and it's doing well. A lot of people want a lot of help, and, you can't do that without money. He goes, okay, save your breath. Come on down. See me. So I went down to see him, went in the office. Again, we talked about my mom and dad a lot. And he said, okay, let's go. And I said, where are we going? And he goes, upstairs. And I'd worked for the government for a while, so I knew upstairs was, where the power is.
Right.
And I said, but wait a minute, I haven't told you anything. He said, you told me enough on the phone. We walked into the Deputy Attorney General's office.
Oh, wow.
Sat down, and he said, Lois, listen to this. Her name is Lois Harrington. And this is when the victims movement started too.
Okay.
Back in the 80s. So you have to understand that was a hot issue. And when she heard that we were going to be taking care of the victims of cruelty to law enforcement, it was, oh my gosh. She said, Charlie, we got to find a way to fund this. Ever since that first grant, which it took us about 1.5 years to get it, but we got it. Ever since then, we have had about $1.3 million coming in from the federal government since 1988.
Wow. That's incredible. Now,
we could not have survived if it wasn't from that federal grant every year. It started off small. The first grant was like $174,000. And then it just kept growing and growing. And as the organization grew, the more justice liked it, the more they knew we were doing good stuff, the more money we were able to get. And now it's up to about 1.56 million.
Yeah. And these grants, the money goes to what kind of things?
Well, we do 32 events a year that are supportive of law enforcement survivors, whether they be spouses, parents, siblings, adult children, young age children. We do a camp that has almost 400 people coming.
Yeah.
We do a widow's retreat to surviving spouses because, the term widow, they like the surviving spouses better. There'll be like 220. We'll do adult children, which can be like, we do a Outward Bound, and then we do a beach week. So there's probably about 300 of those people to go. We go on down to extended family and, of course, coworkers.
Right.
And so those projects are just unbelievably healing. One of the things, Chaplain Jared,
yes,
that really opens my eyes is the miracle is when you sit one surviving spouse down with another surviving spouse of similar circumstances, and they speak exactly the same message.
Yeah.
And to find that somebody's going through exactly the same thing that you're going through is so healing. It just kind of like lifts this tremendous weight off your chest. And I have widows from way back in the 80s that are still coming to National Police Week.
Yeah.
Why do you keep coming back? Because I might be able to help somebody.
Yeah. That's been one of the genius elements of Concerns of Police Survivors is that you can put surviving spouses, surviving siblings, surviving all these different connections to the person who was lost. You can put them with other people who had the same kind of loss. And that ministers to them so well. It's just so much more effective than somebody who doesn't understand. I'm a chaplain, but I haven't been through what they've been through, and so I can sympathize, but I can't empathize.
As I've aged, I realize that you can't understand what death does to a family or to an individual because every death is different. You can't understand what it's like to have a special needs child in your home until you have it.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like to have to go through hospice until you have to be there with somebody in hospice and you lose them. Yeah. So this is one of those things where experience is the only way you're going to learn it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Can I ask a couple questions just to
Sure.
clear things up? And this may not make it into the recording, but I was surprised to hear you were from Maryland. I thought someone told me you were from Missouri.
I am.
Oh, you are? Okay.
And I live in Texas.
Yeah. Well, I knew you were in Texas now. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey. All of this happened, all of C.O.P.S got started in Maryland.
Okay.
Because my husband, Prince George's County is the county that surrounds D.C. on the eastern side.
Right.
Okay. And I was in D.C., so that's why I said, oh, man, we can do this memorial service. Oh, yeah, we can get it done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's just down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then my sweet husband decides he's going to retire, and he comes home and says, I'm going to retire. And I cried for 2 days, and I kept working, and I didn't have any trouble because I think I had kind of won my place. They accepted me. And then he said 2 years later, I'm moving to Missouri. And I said, no, we can't do that. And he goes, I'm moving to Missouri. And I went out of here. I'm just tired of the big city kind of life. Even though we lived in the country.
What was in Missouri?
We had bought a piece of property on Lake of the Ozarks.
Ah, okay.
as an investment for future use. He didn't say the future was 2 years away. So, oh man, I had a fit. What are we going to do? Because you know what? I mean, this was my life. That during those years, C.O.P.S was my life.
Mm-hmm.
I probably gave so much less to my family than I should have. But the kids were good with it. They'd help me get newsletters out, help me mail stuff. But anyway, I said, I just don't think C.O.P.S can, it can't move. And he goes, well, here's the deal. I'm going to Missouri. Either you stay here with C.O.P.S or you come with me and bring it with me. I said, I don't know if the board will allow that. Well, the board wasn't real sure it was going to work. And personally, I think it was one of the best things that happened to C.O.P.S because at that time we got to be known in D.C., and I was getting more requests to go and help lobby on this bill for the police, lobby on that bill for benefits, lobby on this one. Let's come here and let's do another conference and something else. And I didn't have time. We only had 3 employees when I was in. Right. That was me and 2 others when we were in D.C. And so we were just, I guess you'd say deluged with requests for our participation in some of these things happening in D.C. And I didn't have time to do C.O.P.S work. So when we moved, all that stopped. Right. And that was when C.O.P.S really started to grow. I mean, we came up with a spouses retreat. We went on 2 houseboats on Lake of the Ozarks. What was it? What do you have? 18 women with 2 houseboats pulling up to docks, trying to tie that big boat up so we can go eat, and people just watching with amazement as woman after woman after woman got off the boat. Yeah. And I remember we went into one restaurant, and the guys were sitting at the bar, and they said, "Hey, girls, where's your husbands?" And one of the women said, "They're buried all over the U.S." And now, you can laugh and I can laugh, but at that time it was like, I can't believe she said that.
Right. Yes.
But it was true.
Yeah.
And so then it got to the point where any place they went, and well, what are you girls all doing together? Oh, we're mourning our spouses. What else can you say? Because that's exactly what they're doing.
You might as well lean into it. Yes.
Yeah. So they the group was just so meshed, and it just was so perfect a weekend that we said, well, you know what, we could do this for everybody. Yeah. And then the second thing we did was a camp, and then we did a parents retreat, and then we did adult children's retreat, and then we did, and it just kept growing and growing and growing.
That's fantastic.
It was fantastic.
So you were executive director for 27 years.
Yes.
Is there one thing that just sticks in your craw? Like, boy, I wish I could have completed a task or added another layer of something. Was there one thing that was unfinished that you wish you could have done?
I don't think there was anything unfinished because I think we opened so many doors to so many programs. The thing that bothered me the most was I wasn't accepted as readily as I believe I should have been because of the work we were doing. And I found it difficult to realize that law enforcement was our biggest barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not uncommon to have big, tough men who are very afraid of death. And you probably represented the issue of mortality to them. They didn't probably want to talk to you. They were scared of it. They didn't want to think about that they could go to work and die. And so,
That's right.
Yeah.
We started a program called the Traumas of Law Enforcement. And I don't know if you've ever been to one of those trainings.
No.
But they do like maybe 9 a year across the country. You need to get on that website and find them and maybe even push them because they are lifesavers. We have had so many, I would say, notes being sent into the office. I don't know if they sent an email or what, but normally we get handwritten notes in the mail that say, that seminar saved my life.
Yeah.
We have somebody come in and talk about suicide and how to deal and first identify all the signs, all the symptoms of it.
Yeah.
And then how, if you're hurting too, how you need to deal with it yourself.
Yeah.
And the numbers of people who have said that is, I think, astronomical because, we had so many guys and gals just break down and say, I'm there, I want to die. This is too painful.
Yeah.
And so that was, I think, the greatest thing we did for law enforcement itself. And we still have those programs, and the Justice Department still funds those.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So let me ask one final question. How has the last decade of retirement treated you?
I wasn't on Facebook until about 3 years ago.
Okay.
I love being on Facebook to see, the survivors that I know.
Uh-huh.
Let me think what I've been invited to weddings for kids that I met at camp when they were 6 years old.
Yes.
It's hard to realize how old I am, but I've been invited to weddings. I send cards out when I find that, somebody that I knew has died. It's just one of those things where I did good.
Yes, you did. Now you're retired in Texas and enjoying the warm weather.
But only until it gets too warm.
Oh, okay. Well,
and then I go back to Lake
tell me
Ozarks.
about that today, Suzie, because it's snowing where I'm at right now. So
it's 90 degrees today. Sorry.
No. Oh, shame on you.
But the wind's blowing at 40 miles per hour, so it has its own air conditioner going.
Okay.
But I'm still at Lake of the Ozarks. I love it there. I love it down here.
Good. Yeah.
I'm still really good friends with a lot of the surviving widows. When they have the spouses retreat, they come in a couple days early, and I'll go up and join them for dinner. The last day that they're there, something like that.
Yeah.
It's just fun to see their kids growing up and having their own babies and stuff like that. But boy, those were the years.
Yeah. Even after all those tragic losses, there were still meaningful connections and relationships that went forward.
Oh, let me tell you, you have no idea how many meaningful relationships there are. I mean, we got 50-some chapters. I think it was like 54 chapters now all across the country. And those chapters are doing such a great job on the grassroots level.
Yeah, they are.
And oh my gosh, yes. And then they go into national events during Police Week, and it's just like, a family reunion. It really is.
That's wonderful. Yeah. God bless you. I'm so glad I got to talk to you today.
Well, you know what, Jared? I'm glad I got to talk to you too. And I hope I didn't say anything bad, like about talking about my mom.
No.
Having a beer distributor or anything, because,
No,
I think
that's just fine. That's just fine. Yeah. You did a great job. Thank you so much.
Well, keep up your good work, too, because you're just as important as anything out there to help save these men and women and to help those survivors through their difficult times. So thank you, Jared.
Thank you. God bless you.
Have a good one. You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. One of the key differences between 50 years ago and today is that communication and getting information is so much easier, which means doing good follow-up is easier. Concerns for Police Survivors sets a great example for how to continue to minister to that family after the funeral is over. If you have survivors from your department, even if it's from decades ago, you need to find and maintain updated contact info for them. And then you need to contact them and invite them to participate in the life of the department year after year, even if some of them don't respond. You keep reaching out and you keep remembering and honoring them for the sacrifice that they've made until they eventually make peace with your department. If you're not sure how best to approach this, contact Concerns of Police Survivors and let them help you. They know because they've been through this themselves. The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
Here's the thing that when I talk about, traumas and whether it be cumulative or acute, if you don't take time to deal with whatever it is that's affecting you, that doesn't just go away. And here's an example. So I was a young officer, mid-20s during Katrina, and I thought nothing bothered me. I just put my head down, worked hard, and then came up to Kansas City, never really addressed any of the things that I experienced. 8 years later, I was asked to give a presentation on my experience in Katrina to just my shift. So I was a corporal at the time, mid-level supervisor. And as I'm giving this presentation, I break down in tears because I decided at that point that I finally needed to deal with some of the stuff that I had dealt with. And I never realized it was even there.
Yeah. I had no idea it was going to affect you.
No,
like that.
Not at all. Yeah. Because, you take yourself geographically, emotionally, and just separate that, which cops are really good at.
Yeah.
Any first responder can just kind of put that wall up and pretend it's not there.
And here's one more excerpt from my delightful conversation with Suzie that almost ended up on the cutting room floor.
You're going to have to mend this because I just have somebody knocking at the door. That's my friend with my purse that I left and she got her hair cut.
Don't worry, I will.
I'm talking to this really nice guy with this really nice voice from Kansas City, Kansas.
Okay, well, I'm getting wet from the sprinkler.
Okay, go get dry. Thanks, Bonnie. I'm sorry I left it in your car. That's what happens. That's what happens when you're retired.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. Like I said, I can edit that all out. Thank you, Suzie, for the incredible work that you've done, for your contribution to law enforcement, and for the wonderful conversation we had. May God bless you. If you like what you heard here, please share this episode with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening today, and as always, pray for peace in our city.